Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my honor to have T. Clay Buck on with us.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in its own. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
T. Clay Buck has been in fundraising for over 30 years. Clay, the T is silent, held just about every position in fundraising, from development assistant to grant writer to chief development officer. He started his own individual giving and fundraising communications consulting firm in 2018. He's the creator of the Fundraiser's Planner and co-host of the #1 fundraising podcast, Fundraising is Funny. Clay makes his home in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he teaches strategic planning and fundraising at UNLV, and is owned by two poorly trained golden retrievers who've mastered the art of the ask, especially at dinner time. So welcome, Clay.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So you have quite the resume of things that you've done over the years.
I'm just we just do better when I'm entertained. That's really what it is. Just keep myself busy, you know.
Well, so one of the questions that I had for you that I'm going to start with is one that I actually didn't provide in advance, which is, so many of the fundraising professionals didn't start their careers in fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
Often they kind of fell into it.
Sure.
So how did you get your start?
Well, if you or anybody that's listening has listened to the podcast or been to one of my sessions, it will come as no surprise that I was an actor, and still kind of sort of am. I was in theater and spent summers working at a summer stock theater where, selling tickets and box office and all that, and every ticket sale was, and would you, we're a nonprofit, would you like to? Fast forward 6 or 7 years, I finished graduate school, moved to Chicago, realized that the $500 I had in my pocket was not going to be enough to live on, and also I hated auditioning professionally, so I needed a job, signed up with a temp agency, and the very first assignment they put me on was at a nonprofit, writing grants. Honestly, they needed an extra set of hands, and they said, do you have any writing skills? Here, write a grant, here's how you do it. And they hired me full-time after a couple of weeks of working, and then I started to make the connections. Oh, this is what I had been doing. I didn't know this was a formal career. This was a business, etc. They tell you in actor school, if you find something you love more and can do better, go do it. So I did, and have been in nonprofit and fundraising ever since.
Wow. That's quite the story.
Fell into it like so many of us did, accidentally, but many of us found a career and a vocation that I truly love and have been honored to do for this amount of time. So, glad it happened.
Well, I think that, in an ideal world, we wouldn't actually be needed. In an ideal world, people would just give money and you'd just be able to collect it.
Yes, in an ideal world, I agree with you. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I've kind of come to the thought that what I believe is, if we lived in a perfect utopian society, every need is taken care of, all of the things that so many of us raise money for, right? We you hear that, right? The job of nonprofits is to go out of business. I wish every animal had a home and everybody was fed, and all of the many, many things that we do. If we lived in a perfect society, and all those needs were taken care of, there would still be some human who needs something, and there would still be some human who wants to help, which means there will still need to be enablers and empowerers of generosity. And so whether we're doing it because we have to, or whether we're doing it because generosity is just part of being human, I think we're always going to be here.
Right. That's an interesting and profound way of looking at it. You know, I look at, what was it? March of Dimes, right? So that was originally to cure polio.
Right.
Well, here's a hint. They have the cure for polio. So, you know, they changed their MO as to what they're raising money for, and they changed it to birth defects, right? So it was a bigger basket of folks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because the world is always changing. We are always changing with it. To me, it's one of the exciting things about the profession. Depending on where your expertise is or your experience is, like, we get to do a lot. Everything from, you know, data to writing to interpersonal relationships to grant writing and people who move sector to sector, vertical to vertical. You know, think about the expertise in different areas. And I know so many fundraisers that, you know, they come into an organization, maybe they know the mission, maybe they're familiar with it, but and you start to learn so much. That's one of the things that I've been most grateful for, is both as a frontline fundraiser and then as a consultant, getting to work with different types of organizations and learning more about the cause, the mission, the needs, etc. Like we really do have, I think, a very cool job. It's just a very hard job.
Yes. So much of what we do as fundraisers is kind of shaped by our upbringing. So tell me about how philanthropy was spoken about at the Buck household.
Boy, that's a big discussion. So my father was a Southern Baptist minister. So we was raised in a very strong faith background. So it wasn't, how do I say this the right way? It wasn't that it was discussed. It's just what you did. I mean, it was just what we do. I remember countless family dinners. The phone would ring in the middle of dinner. Dad would answer the phone, and it was somebody somewhere needing something, and off he would go. So it wasn't so much that we were taught or trained, it's that it was modeled, right? And to this day, I still have the very Southern and very Baptist approach. You don't show up empty-handed. There's an old Italian saying, right? You knock with your foot. Whenever you go to somebody's house, you knock with your foot because you're carrying something. Same thing is true in the South, the American South, Southern Baptist. That's what we do. And it just, honestly, I love that you phrased that question. I had never been asked that before, and really, I would say it was much more modeled than it was discussed or trained or taught. It's just what you did. You helped people.
You know, it's fascinating. I started actually my fundraising career, nice Jewish boy, working with different Catholic churches on their capital campaigns. But I found that those that have some sort of religiosity, if that's actually a word, you know, that are spiritual in some way, shape, or form, tend to be much better donors than those that are not.
I would agree. And my frustrated academic background wants to get into semantics and, you know, kind of drill down in the way you phrase it, but I'm gonna pass on that. In that I agree that from a spirituality perspective, it's part of theology, it's part of training, it's part of life. It's just ingrained in so many and regardless of which faith background you come from, regardless of what, even if you don't come from a faith background, it's just so ingrained in part of humanity, right? That I actually think, and I'm just starting to dig into this, I do believe in some of the initial research that I'm seeing is we are actually hardwired to give. There is just a part of being human that drives us, and it is associated with the empathy creators, dopamine, serotonin, all of that, right? Pro-social behavior. It is part of our chemical makeup. It's part of our neuroscience, our neuro, what am I trying to say? Neurobiological brain. Right. It's our brain chemistry, right? That kind of drives us, then coupled with faith background and the what you learn coming up, right? It all augments to create that, whether it's, you know, traditional philanthropy or just general generosity. It's a part of who we are, as part of the human experience.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was always amazed. As a matter of fact, I remember a story, this is going back, I guess, in the mid-90s. There was a church campaign I was doing, and there was a gentleman that would throw $100 bill on the plate every Sunday. And, we said to him, like, if you put it in an envelope and we know who it is, you get a tax receipt for it. And he said, I don't want a tax receipt. It's in between me and God. Like, I'm doing my thing, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And it was very technical, like this is the way I was brought up, and this is the way I do it. I don't care about taxes. That's not why I'm giving.
And I have to say, I do think where we are in 2024 and what we are seeing in the current trends, both in the United States and Canada, right? We're all going on. Fewer households are giving to charities. Fewer households are giving to charities, which is getting presented in some ways as there are fewer donors. No, the reality is that more and more people are giving via non-traditional methods like GoFundMe, crowdsourcing, mutual aid, giving societies and giving circles, because people are saying this, look, I want my gift, my generosity to do something, right? So I'm going to put it where I'm getting the, I don't care that it's tracked. I don't care about the receipt. I don't care about the taxes. I care that what I'm doing is doing something for someone. This, to me, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to say it. This, to me, is where our work is evolving, is how do we start to much more recognize and honor that and make our work of fundraising about engaging and empowering that than about let's get a name on a building, let's present a list of donors, let's like that traditional stuff. I think we're going to start to see less and less, and more we're going to see, look, I'm giving because it does something for me. I'm giving it because I want to know that it's going directly to this situation, to this person, to this thing, right? We're just the conduit of that.
Yeah. Every year in Canada, the Stats Canada always comes up with, the number of people that say they give to charity. And there's always a huge disparity from the number of people who say they give to charity versus the number of charitable tax filers.
100%.
It's a huge disparity. But, if you're giving to someone who's experiencing homelessness on the street, you aren't getting a tax receipt for it. So you're just helping that person out.
Right. Your next door neighbor, is in the hospital for a week, and you make meals every night and you take it over to them, and, you hand them $50 to like DoorDash something, right? Then somebody comes to you and says, do you give? Yeah, I give. Right. I volunteer my time. I gave my neighbor $50. I baked the church a casserole. Of course I give. I just don't show up in your retention reports, right? So Giving Tuesday, the organization Giving Tuesday did a report 3 years ago called From Scarcity to Abundance, Mapping the Generosity Ecosystem. And they redo that report every year. They call it their look back report. And it's available on their website, givingtuesday.org. Their Pulse report, they update. This is a shameless plug for the work that Giving Tuesday is doing. But what they found, they did a global study and continue to do the study, and 85% of people globally who were asked, do you give? Are you generous? 85% responded yes. And the vast majority indicated that they give in one of three ways: money, stuff, or time, right? And most people are giving in more than one of those ways. So there are people that give time, and they give their advocacy, and they give things, right? They donate stuff. And they are thinking of themselves just as generous as the person who's writing the $500 check every year, right? That, to me, is such an important look at. I mean, if we look at the world as, we divide the world into either donors or non-donors. If we look at the world, at our communities as everybody gives in some way, right? I think it changes how we frame, how we see, how we approach the work that we're doing, right? Let's assume positive intent. I know it's hard. It's so hard because we're all dealing with so much stuff every day, right? And there's so much on the news and everywhere else, but recognizing that humanity of each other, that we are all generous people, we are all walking around considering ourselves as thoughtful and caring. That, to us as fundraisers, to me, is a great motivator for the work that we get to do.
Clay, this has been unbelievable. I really appreciate the time that you've given. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very engaged and respond on LinkedIn. You can also find me online at tcbfundraising.com and reach out to me that way. And I make the circuit. I'm at conferences and stuff. So if you happen to see me or want to cross me, just come say hi. But I'm always open for the conversation. Look forward to talking with folks. Yeah.
Wow. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.